Welcome to PhD with Women on IT Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest, Tracy Lamourie. Today's title is Building Your Brand in a Digital World, and I'm delighted to welcome our viewers on all digital media today, including YouTube, Facebook, as well as our debut on LinkedIn. PhD episode 24 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you are building your brand in a digital world. The best marketing doesn't feel like marketing. Tom Fishburne. In today's episode, we are going to learn how to build your brand in the digital world and what is the difference between editorial and advertorial, and why does it matter to an entrepreneur? What are some ways entrepreneurs can get media attention? If you did not nail down these and many more answers, tune in, join industry practitioner Tracy Lamourie, featured in Rolling Stones, NBC, CBC, Huffington Post, etc., working internationally and across industries. She's well known for her work with ethical businesses, authors, entertainers, progressive politicians, media personalities, public speakers, and issues-based groups. The list is endless. We discuss the specific strategies, concepts, and tactics necessary to thrive in today's ever-evolving online marketplace. During this practical discussion, I would like you to take part of, and you will discover smarter, more effective ways to design and implement digital footprint, which will elevate your brand, help foster valuable connections, increase potential sales, and position you as a leader in your field. It's time to build your brand in the digital world. Tracy, where in the world are you?
I am just outside of Toronto, and normally I'm all over the world, literally in a pre-COVID world. In 2019, for example, I was in Malta, Jamaica, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, all over the place working. But for the last 14, 15 months, I have been saying I'm on Hamilton Mountain, which is just outside of Toronto, not Hollywood Hills for now, but I'm still doing the same global and international work, like as you were saying, across borders and across industries. And so I've been in my home country of Canada for the last year and a half.
Fantastic. And as a Women on IT founder, which was founded in Malta in 2019, I cannot stop but mention the fact that you were in Malta in 2019, weren't you?
I fell in love with Malta in 2019. Yeah, in November, I was there on Medical Cannabis Island and IT Island. We were there for the conference, the 4-day conference of international investors, just, for the next big thing. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful space. And, it's my dream to come back, and my husband's been planning to go back. So hopefully we'll have an in-person event in Malta one of these days, and I'll come back and see you.
Fantastic. So Tracy, tell me, you're a publicist, and what is this position and what do you do? What is your daily job?
So it's different every day. It's amazing. It's funny because we always laugh that on TV, when they want to make somebody glamorous, if they're not a doctor or a lawyer, they're a publicist, right? So it does have the component of the VIP parties and as I mentioned, all the travel and all that stuff. But essentially, what my job is to get people in the news, to get people in the media, to help them build their reputation for global thought leadership the way I have, whether they're creatives, whether they're artists, whether they're startups or entrepreneurs. And my book, which is coming out in a little while, called Get Repped, Build Your Brand with Effective Public and Media Relations, is aimed at the entrepreneur and startup audience specifically, because I find that 80 to 90%, truly 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs, small businesses and startups aren't really thinking about or aren't understanding the power of the PR component. As you mentioned, they all know the advertorial, how to do the advertising, but that is not what gets you in the newsroom. So I both do for people, and I teach and educate on the difference between advertorial and editorial, how to access the newsroom, no matter what it is you do, how to build your brand internationally as a global thought leader, or whatever language you want to use, but get yourself out there so that people know what you're doing.
So let's go back to the advertorial versus editorial. Why is it very, very important? What is the issue there?
What is that, right? Yeah. So essentially, we all know about advertising, how to talk about our product, how to, for an ad, but that is literally the opposite of the kind of thinking that gets you into the newsroom. For example, the newsroom wants you to talk. Advertorial means, so advertorial obviously is advertising. Editorial is where you're a source and you're actually contributing important information of value to the audience. So when you're pitching to be a guest on a show like like your podcast, or to be a panel guest, or when you're pitching to be on CNN or NBC, the same thing. You have to understand yourself as somebody providing value, information that the audience doesn't have, and so you are a source for that information. It's not an opportunity for you to get a free ad for your company, though essentially that actually happens, just by the fact that you get mentioned in these high profile places. So.
Great. I'm delighted to see some comments from the audience. Thank you, Patrick. Delighted to see PhD live on LinkedIn. So am I, Patrick. So am I. Olga Vasina is with her question, and I know that Katarzyna Pawłowska is loving this video. I'm so delighted because I know, Kasiu, that you've been a great supporter of women in technology. You're in technology yourself, even though you're not directly working as a programmer, but you definitely are creating a content, because the aim of Women on IT is shifting us, consumers of technology, into being creators of technology. So, Olga, good evening, ladies. Love that hat, Tracy. Is it important to look different to make a TV impact, or should we dress corporate for interview?
That is a really good question. And what I would say is the hat, and if you notice, I have the bright red nails, and you can't see I have, bright red hair too, but that's not an affectation. That's not something that I do to be noticed. It's funny. It's a good question though. That's what I've always done. So my answer to that is be genuine, be yourself. So if you're comfortable, dressing corporate, if you're comfortable, just looking, put together and whatever, do that. If you normally, like, when you go out, you would put on this hat, if this is the way you do your nails, don't be afraid to be yourself. Because in general, what I would say ultimately is I preach authenticity in business. People like to work with people that they like. People like to work with people that they know. So don't try to be, a fake or a phony. As long as you're good at what you do, have the confidence to present yourself, as long as it's not inappropriate. Obviously, we have to know what's appropriate in different environments, but don't be afraid to be yourself, but also don't feel like you have to look different, or that you have to, stand out in a physical way. So really, it's just, whoever you are, don't be afraid to be who you are in business. Don't feel like you have to present what you think somebody's going to be expecting to see from somebody in that role. Just have the confidence in yourself.
I love it, Tracy, and I love the fact that I could kind of tweak you into wearing that hat tonight, because I've seen many pictures of you, and you always look different. One with many faces and many hats, we know.
But always red.
There you go. I'm a lady in red as well. I've got my red lipstick, and we've got Kasia Pawłowska loving our show. That's so lovely to see you. Please bring your questions wherever in the world. Where are you? And Doesn't matter what you wear tonight, or you could be naked, or whatever you do. Please bring your questions. Because we've got industry expert, and we want you to succeed. Sorry for that little blank moment, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are again. This is live TV.
Yeah, no apologies. We're genuine and we're authentic, and this is not, we are just having conversations and educating and showing you who we are and what we do. So that's
Some
all.
real talk tonight. Chico Echo, considering the competition, how can we build our brand that make it unique?
So obviously, it depends on what you're doing. Everything is different depending on what the product is or what the service is or, where you are, what your audience is, what your new ideas are. If you have, something compelling to say, but you don't have to always think about, in terms of media or news stories, having the next big thing, because a lot, you are unique. Right? You are unique. And what brought you to what you're doing is unique. And that's where I start with storytelling. So when a client comes to me, whether they're an author or whether they're, a startup selling a product or a service or whatever it is that they are, that's kind of secondary. To them, it's first. To me, it's the second thing. The first thing is, who is that person? What brought them in front of me? Why are they even doing what they're doing? Why do they have that book? Why are they in that career? Why are they? So you are the first story, and you are unique, right? You are a person with a unique story, with a unique background, with a unique, thought process. So I start with, as a publicist, tell me your story, and then I'll start to, she get you profiled, to get some interviews done with you, because you are way more than just what your brand is, and that's where the thought leadership thing comes in. It's beyond just what that product that you're selling. It's beyond, I made the best pen ever, but gee, what can I talk about pen technology, and how can I talk about what brought me to, to change this pen or whatever it is, so, but not even necessarily the next new thing. Move away from, because that's where that advertorial thinking is, where you're thinking you have to be talking about, my product's brand new and different than anybody else, and what I do is absolutely innovative. If it is great, then you can use words like innovative and groundbreaking, and that works. But you don't have to be, because your own story is different from everybody else's, and also you have knowledge about your industry, about what you do, that the average person doesn't. Whether you're in lawn care, whether you're a lawyer, start building what's in here and putting it out there so people can see. So that's where you talk about the thought leadership. If you're a writer, write a couple articles on Medium, for example. Medium doesn't have an editor, so you don't have to, it's not like, you have to pitch somebody to get it. You just start doing it. And that's, one way. And learning things. If you don't know Haro, help a reporter out. If you don't know Source Bottle in Australia, get to know those free services. Those are services where reporters are literally daily, actively looking for sources for particular upcoming stories. And once you get yourself quoted in a few of those, and it's not hard to do if you're monitoring it and answering appropriately, then you've got that basis that you can, build from.
That's interesting that you talk about Medium and all these way to get promoted. We are on LinkedIn today, so you can write articles on LinkedIn. And I think about the fact that now we are living in the age that attention span is really scarce, and to get somebody's attention, it takes a lot of effort. What are some actionable things an entrepreneur or somebody who wants to get out there can do today to start building their reputation?
So what are some things they could do right now?
Yeah.
So the first thing, like, again, if you're a writer, or there's different things to your comfort level, right? Because some people are not writers, whereas some people are not comfortable speaking like you and I are in a podcast, right? So figure out where your comfort level is. If you're comfortable doing all of it, there's all kinds of tools. So again, number one, go to Medium, start an account there. People don't realize, they think it looks like Huffington Post, and people think it is like Huffington Post, but it's not. It's more like Facebook. You can go put up a picture, write an article, but your audience is bigger. So it can go beyond your personal social media audience. If you write well, and Medium's editors pick it up. It could be front page getting 1 million views. But even without that, you have that link that you can start, showing people. It's like a repository to start putting where your thinking is, right? And then beyond that, like I said, help a reporter out, source bottle. If you want to invest a few dollars, because those are free, but if you want to invest a few dollars in it, there's Quotey, which I think is $150 a month. And these are literally places where every single day, reporters from everything from Reader's Digest, NBC, the New York Times, The List, all those things I've gotten my clients in just using those platforms. When, oh, yep, you're doing an article on this. Oh, well, my client can speak about that. Boom. So monitor those things. Or, I always say, if you have more time than money, learn a few of the things that a publicist does and try to get your head around it and utilize some of those tools. If you have more money than time, which a lot of us do, unbelievably, if you have a marketing budget at all, take a little bit out of your marketing budget and put it toward PR, even if it's for just a month. So even if it's just for 30 days, you'd see the way a publicist, and again, I do work internationally if you want to consult, but you'd see the way a publicist would frame you. You'd see the kind of attention they get you just from where they go and what they do. And literally your mind as an entrepreneur, a startup leader will be opened as just to see all the possibilities, the free possibilities that you've literally been leaving on the table. So it's funny because I feel like every time I meet an entrepreneur or an expert, my first question is like, oh, wow, you're doing really impressive work. How come you're not getting quoted in media? And to me, I realize that's my world where that's, the first thing you do. And most people just have no conception of how they would even get to that point or how to approach media or what kind of, what to tell them when you do approach them. And so there are, but there are actual avenues that make it really easy.
So you mentioned the fact that there are many things you can write about. How do I start writing about what I want to write, and how not to sound too advertorial?
So how to start is just, for Medium, for example, it's as easy as going and getting, a Facebook account, right? You go get your Medium account and then you put your picture up and you just start. But the question of how to make it editorial, a good way to think about it is just think about your own reading. Think about what you would expect to read in a magazine. What would keep you on an article? You're not trying to sell something. You're trying to explain something. So if that's probably the best way to put it. You're explaining, you're giving knowledge, you're not selling something. Why do you do it? What's the point of it if you're not selling something? Well, ultimately you're building your brand. You are, and people will go search your name. What you want as a business owner, no matter what you do, whether you're a startup or whatever, is you want, when people go and search your name on the internet, you do not want them to only find your content. No matter how amazing your website is, no matter how awesome your socials are, if they can only find your content, I think that's a problem. When someone comes to me and I Google it, I'm like, that's great. You have lots of nice stuff on the internet, but you wrote it all. So if I'm an investor and I'm looking to drop $1 million on a company or something, and I go to Google and all I find there is what they've said, that's great. I already read their deck. It's when I had a client who told me after 6 weeks of working together, you've changed my business and my life. And when I asked her why, she was a startup. She said, you've literally made investors take us more seriously. And not just investors, but people coming out of the woodwork that I went to school with, families saying, oh, well, you're really doing well now. So that perception makes a big difference. So again, you're going to get $10 million from somebody. Everybody has a beautiful deck. They read your deck, but then when they go and Google you, what do they find? If they find a bunch of articles, you're in Authority magazine being quoted, you're being called groundbreaking in your industry, you've won an award in another continent for what you do. Oh, okay, well now this is a little different than you have a pretty deck and you're telling me what your plans are.
Great, thank you, Tracy. We've got Kasia who says it's great to see your insight, Kasia. Just a second. We've got not her comment. Open mind is at first, and another. Your energy is amazing. There you go, Tracy.
That's so nice.
Fabulous to hear. Yes, you. I know that Kasia is definitely kind of. There is actually a saying: you will never truly bond if you don't share the same values. And it's very true for brands building. So the ethical approach is very important. The fact that you have got some purpose is very important. We talked about purpose just last week, and we've got now Mike Velasco asking us a question. Great show. As a startup, what should we avoid when it comes to branding?
That's a good question. And not one particular thing doesn't come to mind other than, I mean, I would, it's not so much of what I see the mistake people make is not so much that they're doing something wrong, is that they're not doing something. So, in terms of my perspective of what I see is, I see like, those old comedy shows and they'd have like the characters doing whatever and there'd be an assembly line factory in front of them and things are going, they're trying to catch up and do whatever. I see it like that, but the assembly line factory line is like NBC, is like CNN, is like all these media that's got their hands out literally. Oh, what you got something to tell me, pretty much, and all these entrepreneurs and executives going like, oh, no, I don't know anything about that, no. And meanwhile they're paying all kinds of money for marketing, which of course you need marketing. I'm not saying you don't need advertising. Clearly you need advertising and marketing. But to me, not doing, like, it's like people are naked, they're going out to work, with no clothes on in the morning. That's how it feels to me when you're not utilizing media to show that you are an expert in what you do. Because, again, that literally does everything. If the media is coming to you, clearly you're an expert. If you're being quoted in the media, you can't pay for that. You can pay the publicist, for my time and my contacts and my words and my reaching out to the right people to point them to you, to show them, oh, this is a good source for your story. That's what you can pay for. But you can't pay for, you can't pay to get in that article in Reader's Digest. You can pay for an ad in Reader's Digest, but you can't pay to be that expert that the editor quotes, which is, everything. When you're choosing, like, I mean, I'm not I'm not a finance ghost. I wasn't originally thinking about things like this helping people finding funding. I was originally thinking about differentiating yourself from your competitor and exciting your customer and, your current customer. So they're sharing you on socials and attracting, just attracting new customers and all that. But it really is, life, the quote is, life is a pitch, not a bitch, a pitch with a P.
Yep.
And it's true, right?
Yep.
Everything is a pitch, whether it's, whether it's not just to media, but whether you're applying for a job, whether you're, pitching yourself to get that corner office, whether you're, showing, so even applying for, if you're a renter looking for a landlord saying, I'm the one that you should rent to. So understanding, really, it's just, the pitch is presenting your elevator pitch, your best, who are you? Who are you and why should I work with you? Because the fact is, again, people want to work with people they like. People want to work with people that they trust. And one thing you should do is think about, think about podcasts. For example, my time is crazy scheduled, like super scheduled. And yet there was a time a couple of months ago, I was doing 10 or 12 podcast episodes a week guesting. Now I've got it down to 3 or 4 a week, a little bit less. But I've done almost 200 podcasts over the last year. And I also do radio, television, newspapers. I've been in media my whole life. So it's, some people are still thinking, oh, podcast is like a different, lesser media. There's radio, there's TV, there's newspapers, and there's podcasts. They are all equal. They all have different, pluses and minuses in terms of your media messaging. But podcasting is huge, and it's still a lower bar to get into. There's top 10 podcasts that are very, millions of downloads a day that are very difficult to get on, harder than TV. But then there are also, a ton of podcasters who are developing their own brands and looking for good content. And then there is always an opportunity for you to build your brand in that way. And these days, I've found in the age of COVID, it's not just media, it's also very strong marketing. I've never placed an ad, but podcasts are huge marketing if you're especially business to business service provider, and insane networking. A year and a half ago we were shaking hands in Malta and everything else, and then over the last year we haven't had those opportunities. So podcasts have really become that. People are actively looking for ways to grow their businesses when they're listening to podcasts. So if you're not including that kind of thought leadership, where you go and speak about what you do in your brand. You're, either in writing or in podcasts, you're really falling behind. You don't have to be a podcast host, which can be taking up a lot of time, but for sure you should be considering, guesting and talking about what you do as part of your, whether you think of it as advertising, I think of it as media, but getting yourself out there.
And talking about your experience, sharing your experience, because there are so many people out there who want to learn from others. And definitely podcast is also a different kind of niche, because we can see many people jogging or driving car, wherever they go to. Just last week, I was meeting with a friend of mine, and she was like crazy about this coach, and she was telling me, and you've got to listen to him, and you've got to read his book, and so on. And I tried to listen to his podcast. It wasn't really doing much for me, but then I picked the book, and that was it. So different things for different people, and
exactly. Yeah.
So definitely,
and actually that's a great point that you just made up. This is a good regarding the different things for different people. There's I have one client who is one of the biggest beauty brands in the States now, and he's brilliant in terms of marketing. They've developed their brand. It's literally one of the top growing companies in the whatever list. But one thing that I thought was brilliant that I've even learned from what they've done is they blog about, for example, he says they sold like $1 million in makeup and beauty products online by getting people to their site. And the way they did that was basically blogging, really good I mean, they did other stuff too, but they talk about how they did something like 100 or 1,000 or whatever their number was, a bunch of blogs in a year. And what that taught them is, it's getting people to the site. And once they're there, we can build that relationship, and then we do the hard sell, because we talked about relationship building, how the customer isn't usually ready to buy when they first, hit your site, but you have to get them to come back. And how do you do that? By letting them read. Anyway, what he does is when he's on, and I'm going to start to implement this for all my clients too, is when he's on a podcast, not only does he share it on socials like I do and all my clients do, then he writes a blog about being on that podcast, which is great because all the hosts love that, because now he has magnified the hosts and their media property, so more people can see it and hear about it, not just when he shares it, but when then he writes about it. So he doesn't write like a transcript of it. He writes, hey, I was really grateful to be on the show with Beata and, blah, blah, blah. And then he does a whole 500-word blog about it, which has great SEO. Anyway, they have literally spent as much time in their content, and they call themselves the cosmetics and a beauty and tech company. And they've spent as much, they could also be called a content company, because they've spent as much time in their content creation. And I'm sure that took a lot of money and a lot of, work off the top, but now they're literally one of the top beauty brands in America, in the world, and helping other people build their brand. So, even when you think you know everything, I've been a publicist for 10 years, but I never thought of, making blogs about the podcast I was on, as an extra thing. But then all of a sudden that's that much more visibility. So little things like that, you never know, little tips and tricks, as well as giant new things.
So content is fire, social media is gasoline, Jay Bayer. Can you give us some examples of how media and PR has gasolined your clients in business?
Yeah, I have one example that there's a ton of examples I could tell, but one example I love to tell because it's, just so 26 years old, she was a life coach named Christopher, never had any media. And, a lot of people are life coaches. She's fantastic, but it's hard to, differentiate yourself as one of those fields that there's a lot of people saying the same thing, or they look at it saying the same thing. How do you differentiate yourself? So she hired me, and I gave her a great deal. She, again, had zero media. She was 26 years old when we started, and her story was, remember we talked about your personal story, right? What's different about a life coach? Well, she decided, if I start telling my personal story, people will see that I have something, to share with them with this job. So her personal story was living a successful life in spite of bipolar. And so she decided to start sharing that story. And literally the day she hired me, the next morning I saw a request. Remember, we were talking about Harrow, help a reporter out and all those things. The very next morning I saw a request from a reporter for Good Housekeeping magazine, which is one of the most iconic, 150-year-old American magazine, on like every drugstore counter in the English-speaking world, right? And um, a Good Housekeeping reporter was looking for women willing to share their stories of bipolar between 25 and 40. So I pitched her, and literally the next day she talked to the reporter. The reporter loved her, and she ended up in the print issue of Good Housekeeping. Again, the one that's at every grocery store counter. And as a result of that, then she was called a mental health champion in some other media. But essentially, she's literally gets any media she wants now on that topic, just on the strength of that Good Housekeeping cover story 2 years ago that just literally happened because she hired a publicist one day, and the next day I saw that opportunity. So that was when she's still getting media off that, still getting clients off that. I had another situation where it was a client who had a service where someone would pay her $100 an hour, basically consulting with personal issues. They would call her, pay her $100 an hour for her time on the phone. And I got her an interview on Toronto's biggest talk radio station. And she had, not if you had an ad, you would have got 30 seconds and you would have paid. You guys know better than I do how much advertising costs on a major radio station in a major market, right? So she would have got a 1-minute ad, paid however much money, and nobody would have paid attention. Instead, she had a 1-hour interview with people calling in and her answering questions and the host laughing and the host loving her. And she told me that, her phone rang off the hook with I don't even know how many hundreds of dollar accounts that week, right? But funnily enough, years later, I'd moved and I wasn't working with her anymore. And, years later, I looked her up and she was still doing regular appearances on that radio station that I connected her with. So,
Excellent.
having a publicist for 1 month, and I connected her with them, and, they fell in love with her, and that opportunity opened up. So
she got her money back.
Every day. Yeah, nobody comes to me and is thinking, gee, I wasted my money on that. Nobody. Everyone's always like, why didn't I do this before?
Yeah. What took me so long? Absolutely. So we've got a question from our regular viewer, Tracy Lopez. Hi, Tracy. Do you have any tools which you find useful aside from social media?
Yeah, you may have missed the one that went. Write these ones down because these are really good. Like, honestly, these are the free services that I use every single day. The minute I wake up as a publicist, the first thing I'm doing is checking Harrow, which is help a reporter out. It's help a reporter out. .net, I believe it is, or maybe .com, but search Harrow, help a reporter out. It's free. You sign up for an email list. They come in 3 times a day. You can do it by, if you're a real estate agent, you only want to see things about houses, you can do that. But you'll literally see media requests on the daily on help a reporter out that you can respond to yourself or you can get clients to. The other one like that is Source Bottle out of Australia. And about 30% of that is Australia only, but a lot of it is, international and some American media rights on there too. And then there's one called Quotey, which you have to pay for. It's $150 a month or something. The other ones are free, but Quotey is kind of a turbocharged professional version. And again, where you can literally spend a little bit of your time every day to see what media today is looking for articles that are going to come out next week. So they're literally things like, you'll see things like for an article in Reader's Digest, I have a deadline of Tuesday at 4:00. I'm looking to speak to, experts who can tell me what color to paint your kitchen to sell it quicker. Or I'm looking to speak to, teachers who can whatever. Or I'm looking to speak to authors who. So, no matter what it is you do, if you monitor that for a week or so, it'll blow your mind as to what kind of opportunities are coming. And also, it's an interesting viewpoint to what the news is going to be talking about next week.
Good. We've got Kasia commenting. I love this situation when marketing content, people using that content in life, making some. Sorry, I just need to scroll down. Making something and transforming in other activities. That's correct, Kasia. It's very and this is also what Guyan is asking, because this is all about vulnerability, about your opening up yourself to the outside world, talking about whatever health issues you might have, because there are communities out there who might have similar stories, similar experiences, and they want to bond and want to feel what it's like. So Guyan is asking how to be vulnerable and feel as confident as you are, Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, how do you teach that? I just say you literally, just do not second guess yourself. This is one thing I say in terms of the confidence part of it. In terms of being vulnerable, like just be, it's all the same thing, I guess. Be yourself. How do you feel comfortable walking into a room and not feel judged and feel like you're supposed to be there? And, we hear about the term, imposter syndrome a lot, and that's what you're talking about there, is when people have that feeling that like everyone's looking at me, or I'm not as good as everybody else in the room, or how do I show that I deserve to be here. And honestly, just remember that most people have that. And most people feel that way. It's a strange person that doesn't feel that way, or a person that has gone through it and realized that they don't have to feel that way, that doesn't feel that way anymore. So you're not alone, and you're not the only guy in the room feeling less than, or the only person in the room feeling like, oh man, I don't know as much as the other people. That's a common feeling of human nature. So turn that around and realize, no, if you're so for example, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in business, you're taking people's money to do what you do. If you wouldn't be doing that if you didn't feel like you were, you had an expertise in it. If you don't feel that you're better than the average guy in what you're doing, you wouldn't be like, hey, come and pay me to do it for you. You've got that expertise. That you do. Your stuff. But then when you ask people, oh, what about talking to media about it? Or even just, getting up in front of a room and people and talking about what you know how to do. Some people are shy about that. So don't,
Mm,
and the other side of that is true. People feel, oh, I don't want to look like I'm arrogant. So I have accomplishments, but I don't want to talk about it. Literally, power women, especially, all the time. I talked to a lady the other day, a podcaster, and I said, well, you did what? You should be talking about that. And she said, oh, well, I don't, it was something being on like major national media. And she said, oh, but I don't want to brag. And I was like, what are you
mm.
talking about? Again, get that out of your
Yep,
head. Get that out of your head.
yep.
And my friend Anne-Marie, we were talking about people being afraid of appearing arrogant, right? It's not arrogant to talk about your accomplishments. She made a really good point, and a quote is, confidence has a smile and arrogance has a smirk, right? So don't feel like if
Mm,
you're talking about your accomplishments and people are going to be thinking you're bragging, just don't brag. It's one thing to be like, because look at this, I'll show you the difference. Like, hey guys, I got an award, versus
mm.
I got an award. I don't know what you did last week, but I got an award. Obviously, that's arrogance, right? But the first one is
Yep.
not arrogance, and nobody would take it that way. So, just literally be yourself, and remember that everybody else in that room, likely feels the same way as you. If someone is acting like super nasty, then probably they feel even more the same way as you do, in their, trying to
Mm.
accommodate for it, right? So just, there's no way to learn it other than just be like, no, you know what? I have every right to be in this room. I am I know what I'm doing, and that's it. I'm here to do it, right? So just don't let them get you down,
Yep,
basically.
totally. Yes, there is this imposter syndrome. That's one thing. But also, I like to quote Cindy Gallop quite often. So, Cindy says, no matter how much you brag, you will still not get anywhere near to the men's bragging. So, I say,
It's
do it as
true.
often as you can, because, we are not excelling at that. So, and we've got a question from Olga. The old maxim says there is no such thing as bad publicity.
Oh,
True or false, Tracy?
false. Definitely false. I don't agree with that at all. People say that, I'll, advise them, or they'll say, oh, there's no such thing. And I'm like, I don't know what planet you live on, but in the planet that I mean, just think about the way you personally, Olga, the way you personally look at things. Like with you I don't know you as a person, but and you don't know me, but I'm sure like there are things that you see people do or hear that someone's done, and you're like, that is not okay, that's not for me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to know that person. I wouldn't, and so, I guess it depends what your goal is. If your just literally goal is just to get publicity, but not like you just want to be, then I guess, okay, I mean, you could kill someone or you could, um, cure cancer. Either one is going to get you in the paper, right? But
Mm.
right, but
Yep.
what's the goal here? So,
Yep.
yeah, I think they're very much in terms of today's world, there are people that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Not because I think what other people are going to think, but because of what I think. You know what I mean? There are people that I
Mm.
know when they open their mouth, oh my God, I wouldn't want to sit with that person. I wouldn't want to work with that person. I wouldn't want to. It's the same thing. Your public image is who you are in the world, right? So just like, would you want to be known for like in the live in your live in your community for running into the everybody's living room and like pouring crap all over with beating people up or whatever? How would people want it? Would people want to be around you? No. So the same,
No.
the same thing. So in terms of that phrase meaning, will you be known? Like, sure, there's no such thing as bad publicity in terms of will you be heard of, I've never understood that phrase because, like, it
Mm.
really,
Mm.
you can, and I've seen people work for years to do good work to build, not even consciously to build their brand, but just do good work that ended up building a global or building a reputation for themselves, a thought leadership. And then
Mm.
for whatever personal reasons or whatever they, mental health or whatever, they ended up destroying their reputation they had built because very publicly acting badly. And then there's no going
Mm.
back, from that.
Well, I remember the fact that Ryanair, which is very popular in Europe, they used to run the very bad advertisement. They were talking about the fact that next plane next year they're gonna start charging people for using toilet on the plane. So all these bad stunts really backfired, and then in 2014 they realized there is no way they can run on bad publicity because they are the most hated airplane operators in the planet. So they decided to spin it around and do a little bit of a change in their media strategy. We've got quite a lot of questions, Tracy. We've got to speed it up. We've got, in Patrick's opinion, IPOV, Patrick Young is with us tonight. With regard to bad publicity, how do you deal with tough interviews, and how do you deal with a negative story, Tracy?
So it's hard to answer that without like, specific, like, because every situation is different, of course. But in general, and I mean, I'm working with people that, I mean, I don't work with people that have done something really bad and now we're trying to, um, rehabilitate them in the public mind or anything. That'd be a different story. But still, there are people, there can be a negative story without you having been a bad actor, without you having necessarily meant to have done something wrong. And all of a sudden you're in this, so how do you deal with that? And again, the answer would be more worthwhile if we were talking about a specific situation. But in general, own it, right? And again, I'm not talking about people who are,
Yep.
I wouldn't be working with a situation like a racist who has said something racist because I'm a longtime anti-racist activist. I wouldn't be like putting lipstick on that pig kind of thing, right? So, and obviously if you were a racist, you wouldn't be owning it, right? I hope. But I mean, so I'm not talking about a situation like that, but if say it's a situation where, it's not like you have actually done something that needs to be like, covered up and, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you've done something that, because I wouldn't be working with you if you were lying and we were trying to fix a lie. You know what I mean? But so my answer is always own it. If something happened, take accountability. You did something wrong. Actually, I guess it would be the same, even if you had meant to do something, like even if you weren't completely innocent, you own it. I would still say the same thing. Own it, be accountable. Don't try to lie. Don't try to cover it up because, if it's a situation where it's already a negative story, I guess, again, it's hard to answer this question without knowing what the situation is, because even as I'm answering it, I'm thinking of one kind of situation where I would be like, oh, no, I would do this, or this, and then other kind of situation where you wouldn't. So, sorry, Patrick, it's really hard to answer that with, a kind of a blanket statement,
Yep.
but generally I would say you don't hide, you're going to have to face the music. People are sophisticated, people are smart, and people don't buy the bullshit as easily as you think. So I say own things. I deal with things the way I would in my personal life, which is if you've hurt someone, if you've made a misstep, don't make it worse by, trying to cover it up in the wrong way,
or ignoring it.
or ignoring it. Instead, just own it and be like, okay, that's the thing that happened. I feel like, and then again, some other publicists might argue with that. I don't know, but I have been very successful and my clients successful specifically with that authenticity in business, with that ethical, stand. I feel like the world, people are sophisticated now. It's a lot. I mean, people try to play games, and I think most people will see through those games. So I say, if things aren't perfect, take that situation, own it, and be human about it. Be transparent, and
Try to fix it.
try to fix it. Yeah, legitimately
Yep.
try to fix it, and actually care. Don't just care about the bad publicity. Actually care about what the situation is. Have you hurt someone? Did your business do something that had a negative impact on a group of people? Well, you know what? Deal with it. Fix it.
Yep.
Don't just say it.
Totally. We've seen many entrepreneurs or influencers or, social media influencers, pato influencers, pato streamers who've done some pretty stupid things. Like just, I'm at the moment sitting in Poland, and we had a pato streamer who was bragging about the fact that he can drive 300 kilometers an hour in his Porsche. And just this weekend, he managed to kill somebody crossing the street.
Oh my God.
So what would be, based on that, would be your advice how to fix it? Because his immediate reaction was, all his social media is private now. Nobody can check it outside of his followers.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, when there's been a death, I mean, and what was it? He did it, right? Like somebody's dead because of him.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's not uncovered fully, but that was some of the journalists were saying that it's somehow weird that this specific man who's got very similar looking Porsche all of a sudden went silent on his social media channels, whereas it used to be like every day bragging about something.
Wow,
and that specific Saturday evening, he just had a ride at somebody's expense.
Wow, that's horrible. And I mean, with something like that, it's beyond publicity. I'm sure, I don't know if the publicist is the guy that's telling him what to do with the socials. As the legal people, the lawyers are probably like, shut up, right? Who knows? But yeah, I mean, there's something like that. How do you, when someone is that's not something you can just fix with words, right? You have to make some real amends there and do for the family, and you know
what, Tracy, it's a difficult one, and I agree with you, because it's I've been running the social media for Women on IT, and I've got a great help from Aika, who's asking a question, and we are just going to go to this question shortly. But it's definitely no way you can hide. I think even if the lawyers are involved, there needs to be some publication published. Something needs to go out there, and some reckoning should be out there. And, just coming clean, I would say, would be my approach. Yeah.
In order to get any kind of public, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm sure the lawyers will be telling them something different, because they'll be like, anytime you say sorry or anything, which we would say, the lawyers will be like, oh, you don't want to be saying that, because the court. But then you know what? The lawyer, you might help them in the courtroom, but you're certainly not going to help them in the court of public opinion by that, which is.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. So, Tracy. Hi, Tracy. What do you think? This is Aika. What do you think is one thing that can make or break a brand?
Yeah, at the risk of sounding repetitive, with me, I think just honestly, media. And when I say media, I don't, the difference between advertising. The one component that I think is huge, and that, we started by talking that most people just aren't thinking about when you're starting your brand and you putting your marketing together and your advertising budget and all that stuff. We're thinking about that stuff. So we've got all those things in mind. But 80 or 90% of entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, are just not thinking about the PR and what can real and the media relations, and what really shows you how important that is if you consider the fact that there is not one major corporation in the world. There's literally not a major corporation in the world, no matter what they do, that doesn't have a PR department or a communications department. Not one. And yet 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs aren't even thinking about that. So right there, who's getting the big opportunities to be quoted? Who's getting interviewed? Is these people that have the PR departments? Because the entrepreneur, and I'm not saying you have to go out and get a publicist. I'm saying you have to, though. Hey, I work internationally if you want to, but you do have to start thinking about yourself as an information provider, as opposed to just doing what you do, because this is the age of information that we live in now. We're not living in just the industrial age anymore. We're living in the age of creative thinking and the age of information. And if you are not using these platforms, and I'm not just talking about social media platforms here, I'm talking about using the platforms like that we have, like media, mainstream media, any platform, to speak out, to differentiate yourself from your competitor, then you absolutely will fall behind. The world has changed. It's not the industrial era anymore. It's the information age. So you can't just be doing, you have to also be seen to be doing and to be talking about what you're doing. Otherwise, other people in your industry who are doing that will be elevated, and you won't be, you'll be wondering how you can catch up.
We are 10 minutes left. We've got 10 minutes left
Already?
to get any questions. Yes, I know. It's going very speedy. And thanks to your speed of your talk, we can cover quite a lot. So Tracy, we know that content marketing is a commitment, not a campaign. How do you stay committed? What is your routine? How do you start your day to keep creating content?
I am so bad for the, like when people ask me about work-life balance, I'm the worst person to ask for that, because it's all one. In a way, I'm the best, but in the way, I'm the worst. It's all one thing to me. Like, I love what I do, and I came to it from activism, and my work and my life, and my friend. It's all like really connected. So, first thing I do when I wake up, I'm literally in before I'm out of bed. I'm checking my emails. I'm literally sitting in bed, checking out the Hero, checking out responding to whoever, because I'm up till 4 a.m, sending things out for clients around the world, all over the place. And then I wake up to this barrage of responses, right? So my first couple of hours is always just dealing with the positive yeses that came in, mostly from media, to interview, my clients, and I got to connect them and set them all up and all that stuff. But how do I stay? I mean, keep passionate about what you're doing. Like, if you got into this for a reason, like say you're an entrepreneur. I mean, hopefully you actually chose what you're doing because you have an affinity for it, or you like it, or you love it. And, just keep on going. Like, I love the saying, you didn't get this far to only get this far.
Yep, totally. So I'm thinking about the book that was published in Poland. It's called Crisis Falls onto the Weekend. So, which means basically, when you're not on your desk, this is when the crisis erupts. How do you stay on top of crisis when you're not around? I mean, how do you cure whatever needs to be cured?
Oh my goodness. So I'm not sure if I understood that. When you're not around, I see. How do you deal with? I don't know. I mean, to me, I feel like I'm always around. Like, unless I'm asleep, it doesn't matter where I am. I'm like, on. So I guess, in terms of entrepreneurship, though, you have to, that's not about media. That's just entrepreneurship. You have to always, people think it's funny, those hilarious people who think that, being the boss is easy, or, being an entrepreneur is easier than having a corporate job. It's a whole lot more fun, but there's a lot of pressure too, right? So
Yep.
just keep on going. I don't know.
Totally. Are you working on any exciting new projects right now, Tracy?
Every single day. Are you kidding? And there's always new things. That's the privilege of my work. I mean, I have, one of my favorite projects is the one I've been working on for 20 years, the Jimmy Dennis. I wrote a first press release. My first press release ever was to help the world know about a man who was innocent on death row back in 1999, and he was ultimately released in 2017. He's a recording art, evidence of factual innocence. He's a recording artist now, and he's doing some amazing things and getting some pretty crazy Hollywood attention. So that's ongoing in a project I can't even, really talk about the details of. But then every single day I get new things like right now I'm also working with something called High B&B. They've been getting international attention for the niche travel market, for actually cannabis travel, because Canada is coast to coast illegal. And so that puts us, in terms of international, cannabis related tourism is $1 billion market, right? So High B&B is taking on the Airbnb for that marketplace. And I'm working with, I have literally over 30 clients, and they're all so different. So when I talk about them all, it just really gives you one lady. She just, she's a, what do you call that in finance? Oh my goodness. She was a hedge fund, like a hedge fund person.
Yeah.
And then now she's left that and she's created a game to teach children about finance called Juice. And so that's really neat. We're getting her all kinds of interviews all over the world, Power Women, NBC, Ticker TV. So yeah, literally every day is different. And I could name 20 other projects. Like that's literally every single day I have something different to work on. So my to-do list is different every day. The people that I'm talking to, the goals that are different every day. And there's, a couple movies that I'm working on now, one in England and one here, with filmmaker clients who are doing some really exciting stuff. So yeah, so it's always, ask me what I'm doing. It just literally is different from hour to hour. With this, yes.
How do you keep track of all the things? Because there are so many clients with different backgrounds, different stories. How do you keep your word organized?
It's funny. Part of it, it's definitely not a paperless office. I've got all the apps and all the, whatever. And I've also got my paper, and I've also got, if I could turn my computer around, you'd see I actually have on my desk little pieces of paper with notes on them. And I'd all divide, like I have authors, and then I'll have like 10 authors listed under there. I just need to look at their name and I completely remember their entire story and their, so right in front of my desk, I have a list of like all my clients, so that when I'm looking through all these opportunities, I would never forget one. I would always remember I have a guy who can talk about that. I have a guy, and it's just, they're all like, it's like a teacher. You have 30 kids in your class, but the handwriting of everyone, the skills of everyone, it's the same way. These are the people that, I'm privileged to, that work across industries, whether they're creatives or startups. They literally work across industries and across borders. And I'm honored and privileged every day that they choose me and trust me with their messaging. And it's so fun because every day, it's fun, to call up someone. I got you in Rolling Stone. You're going to be in Reader's Digest. You get, it's fun all the time. It's a lot of work because you're only as good as your last result, right? And accessing these kind of medias, it's easy, but it's not easy. I mean, it's not
totally.
Easy,
So Armenia is saying, great insights, Tracy. Thank you, Women on IT. Thank you so much, Armenia, for tuning in. You're the first comment, second comment after Patrick. Thank you so much. And before we thank everybody else who appeared on the show and left questions or comments and participated in the show actively, can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote, and can you share how that was relevant to you in your life, Tracy?
I will, and I mentioned it briefly, but I want to mention it again. There's two, and I mentioned the Jimmy Dennis, how I wrote my first press release. Well, when the way he got through 20 years as an innocent man on death row, 25 years actually, is he always said, and this sounds, just trite when you just think about it, never, never give up. He has a t-shirt of it, never, never give up. But even, like I said, even these days when even he is having a hard time or whatever, I'll say to him something I found online, which I said earlier in the show, we didn't get this far to only get this far. And the reason I love that so much is because, no matter where you are in life, if you are like doing great, if you're feeling good about what you're doing, but you still have goals like me, you're feeling good, like you're crushing things, but you still want to crush more. You didn't get this far to only get this far. Keep on going. Or like I say to Jimmy Dennis, you didn't, break down the doors of death row and prove the world you're innocent when no one thought you could do that, and get through all that hard stuff to not win a Grammy, because he's a music artist right now. I'm like, you didn't get this far to only get this far. You're going to win your Grammy. But I think it's even more important for the people who are listening who don't feel like they've got the world on a string, people who are feeling down or had a depressed or a difficult time. And, all those people especially, we didn't get this far to only get this far. You didn't get this far to only get this far, because life is hard, and there's a lot of, people in it that'll try to take you down. There's a lot of bad things that will happen. No matter who you are listening, if you got this far where you're listening today, you're already a winner. I don't care if you think you're a loser. I don't care if you think you haven't accomplished anything. You made it. You did it. You're still standing. You didn't let them get you down. That is a win. So you're a winner, and you did not get this far. Even if you're only, if you don't like where you are today, you're still standing, and you didn't get this far to only get this far. So keep on going. There's no other, there's no solution to sit. There's no way to get depressed. You don't sit down and worry or cry. You got this far. Appreciate it and keep going.
Amen to that, sister. Tracy, imagine the pandemic is over and you can invite any person to breakfast in the world. Who would you love to have a private breakfast with, and why? And which place would you choose?
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of questions. So, it's funny. I don't know. After all the pandemic, I almost want to say, like, it's not even like a big celebrity or famous person anymore. It's just like getting together with all the people that I've missed all this time, my community, my family, that's what I would like, is a private breakfast with everybody, just the people, that I've missed through all this. So not so much as a learning opportunity or, a particular famous person anymore. Not for, really, I just want the people back. And where would it be? It will have palm trees, maybe Malta.
Yay!
But honestly, somewhere, Malta, LA, somewhere. I definitely somewhere that I have to take a plane to for sure. I love Canada, but I've had enough of being. I don't want to say stuck, because again, Canada's a great place, but in one place. I'm tired of being in one place for 14 months, and then also I had to go through 2 Canadian winters. So. Without a single palm tree. I want a palm tree.
Oh, good. Well, if it's in Malta, I hope we're going to have sit together and have that private breakfast.
Are you kidding? Totally. We will. I can even picture where there's a little restaurant down there. We stayed at the what was it? The International, whatever. I can't remember the street.
Intercontinental.
Intercontinental. So I literally go out the door, turn right for like 2 minutes, and then you're at the ocean, and then right there's a beautiful breakfast, fresh orange juice. Oh, I'm buying. I'll see you there.
Cool. I'm there as well. Well, thank you very much, all the participants of today: Patrick Jan, Chico Echo, Mike Velasco, Olga Wasina, Pawłowska Kasia, Trixie Lopez, Guyan, Ika Paigio, Erminia, Magia, and those who are silent, who don't want to be on the spot, who do not want to build their digital footprint yet, but I'm sure you will succeed if you take the advice from Tracy Lamourie. That's it from episode 24 of PhD. Thanks to our guest Tracy Lamourie. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Women on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. Next week, I would like to remind you we have another PhD positivity hack delivered. This time we are going to be with Claudia Cafeo, who will teach us how to start with user experience. She started in her free time, so she's gonna share some hints and tips with us how to do it. She's a teacher on a daily basis, but she used her time wisely and she got herself exposed on the digital and building digital footprint. Tracy, definitely she's the one following your advice. When you focus on positives, remember the positives get more positive. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Life lesson quote from our guest speaker is Today, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, Maya Angelou. Today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want. Thank you so much once again for this beautiful debut on LinkedIn, Tracy. See
Thank
you
you
next
so
week.
much. And thank you to everybody listening. If anybody wants to talk more about it, I'm happy to do a free consult. Just tell them that they saw me here.
Absolutely.